Aloha, my name's Anna Covert, and I'm coming to you from my battleship here on the beautiful island of Oahu. This week on the Covert Code, the topic is Cracking the Culture Code, Leadership Secrets Revealed. And I'm so excited to have the amazing Phil Geldart with me, CEO and founder of Eagle's Flight, a Forbes published best-selling author with 9 titles, and executive advisor for organizational leadership and culture. A true learning expert, Phil has helped thousands of companies unlock human potential and drive meaningful corporate change. Thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So to get things kicked off, since 1988, Eagle's Flight has helped train over 1.5 million people in 50 countries and in 20 languages. It's very impressive. Can you tell me a little bit about your vision when you first started the company and how it's evolved since then?
I think to understand the vision for the company, you need to go kind of back to my days as a student at university, where I hated being lectured at. I thought, okay, firstly, I don't understand a lot of what they're saying, and I've got to remember all this, and it's really boring, and it was just tedious. So I was not really a good student, and I didn't like it. But at the same time, I was doing a lot of Christian ministry with youth, and discovered that the way to help people learn was not lecture like I was getting at university, but get them get engaged in things and do things. And so when I moved into the corporate world, I took my dislike for being lectured at and my appreciation for people liking to do things and created what you would think of as games, but they're actually fairly sophisticated experiences where you go into this totally different environment. You might be racing across the desert, or you might be rescuing somebody in space, but you go through this activity, typically in a team, and you have a tremendous amount of fun. It's very challenging, and you either survive or you don't survive. And at the end, we do a debrief. And the debrief is, so what did you learn? And the learning was buried in the game. And all we did was bring it to life for them. So the people learn for themselves. And they began to say, oh, that was really cool. I didn't realize this, and I didn't realize I did that. So that allowed me to talk about if you were to behave differently in the game, you get a different result. But the game is an exact metaphor for what you do on the job. So if you take the same learnings from the game and you bring them on the job, you'll be much better. So that provided a very different approach to learning. It was really successful. People learned, they changed their behavior, were very successful. So that then became the basis for Eagle's Flight as we brought those games out into the marketplace, because I was doing those for the company that I was working with, but they allowed me to bring them out into the marketplace. So that was this experiential learning, which was the genesis of Eagle's Flight.
That is so cool. It makes me think about when I was back in school, and one of the first computer games that there were was a typing game, and I would sit and play, and that's why I'm such a fast typer. I can type like 160 words a minute, and it was from that game, and it was just so fun. And I think that is the way to really
Yeah.
educate anyone.
Yeah, it's very.
So tell me, you've written 9 books, which is incredible. I felt like I gave birth when I wrote this my first book. Tell me about your latest one, Leading What Matters Most: The Business Parabola and Unlocking Human Potential.
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges organizations face, I think, is how do I get at the fact that people come to work and they want to give their very best, they want to contribute, they want their organization to thrive, but the leaders don't really have the ability to get at that. Leaders tend to manage for outcomes, which is important, and results, which is important. So they are more focused on what I would think of as the tactics of what I as an employee can bring to. They're not so focused on what the potential I have and how I could bring that potential to the organization. They just don't know how to do that. It hasn't been trained into them. So once you understand that a human being has the potential to contribute a tremendous amount, and you can learn to tap into that, you can allow them to contribute much more significantly to their organization, because they're not just doing the job, they're doing it, and they are bringing their own innovation, their ideas, their suggestions, their observations, and they're actually able to contribute much more. So that's the problem that is currently out there in the workforce by and large. So to get at that, thought, how in the world do we help people appreciate that truth? So a number of the books I've written and Eagles Flight courses give you the mechanics. Here's what you do to release human potential. But I wanted leaders to realize that that was actually an option. That you should be thinking about that you shouldn't just be thinking about people as tools. So leading what matters most is the story of a CEO who runs a successful tech company, but she's running into problems, and the problem is on the people side. She goes, well, why is that? I mean, we have a great product, but my people are not fully engaged. And so her leaders learn to engage the people. And the journey that she takes helps the reader understand, oh, this is important. There's actually some steps you can take. You can get an outcome and come out with a different result. So I wanted folks to believe and see more clearly that as a leader, I didn't just manage the responsibilities I have, I need to manage my people, and then the responsibilities that they can contribute to will be greater and more significant. So that was kind of the genesis behind the book. And back to my, I hate just getting lectured at, I put it in a story format so you can kind of read through it.
Yeah,
Larry.
Bridget's story, right?
That's right. We're just
I'm excited to read it. When does it hit shelves? This is
Yeah, I think if you go on now to your favorite bookstore, you can download either a digital copy or buy a live copy. I think it's up and available now. So go to Amazon or wherever and you can get it. So
Yeah, I was watching one of your videos on YouTube, and I really liked it a lot. It was that the customer isn't always right. They're first, but they're not right.
right.
Always right. So how do you take that learning and foster, train people on how to, I think, it's so easy as a leader to tell people what to do, or that, Y versus X theory of, you know, empowering them. So how do you do both, making sure that we're empowering the employee, but still maintaining the consistency of the brand and that promise?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think before I answer it, let me tell you the risk. If you do not get empowerment right, then there are 3 or 4 unintended consequences that could occur. You get it wrong and you empower people too much, and they make decisions that put the enterprise at risk. You're losing money, and well, I'm trying to do the right thing, but their empowerment framework is too high, so that's the problem. Or when you go to empower people, you don't actually understand that they need guidance in terms of, well, what resources do I have to work with? Where can I go for information? What training do I need? So you can't just say to people you're empowered without equipping them to be successful. So on the one hand, I don't want to give them too much freedom. On the other hand, I want to give them guidance that will allow them to be successful. So those are a couple of the major pitfalls. And the third is when you think about empowerment, people think, okay, what I'm really doing is giving people authority so they can go do stuff, which isn't really what empowerment is. You've got to go back to first principles on it so that you think ultimately every one of us has a job to do. We're given a task, you've given a goal or a mandate or something, and that is given to you by your leader. And you got to deliver that mandate. But in an empowered organization, before you receive the mandate, your leader comes and says, this is what we're trying to achieve. What do you think? So what's your point of view? You're on the front line. So let's say, for example, that the organization and then the leader, therefore, as a result, is saying, we really want to improve our return policy in our store because our competitors have a great return policy. People don't like ours. So we're going to have a return policy. And they can either lay down the law, and the frontline people could go, this is stupid. I've got to implement this ridiculous policy. Or the leader can take an empowering approach and say, we're going to change the return policy. That's a non-negotiable. But what are you hearing from the clients? What do they like about it? What do they not like? What are you hearing about what our competitors are doing? So before the leader makes the decision around what the mandate will be, they talk to the people who actually have to do the work. And the people go, yeah, well, I'm really glad you asked because here's what I'm hearing and here's what you need to know. And now they feel empowered because they are contributing to the work that they're ultimately going to be assigned. Now, the leader's got to have some skills. So I may not agree with everything you say. We may not do everything you suggest, but I appreciate your input. So now that employee feels when they're given the task that they've had a say in what that task is, and they're more committed to making it happen. So if you take that and you marry it with once they go to do the task, I, as the leader, have said, and here's the resources that you have. You don't need to keep coming and asking. You can use these. You can't use your budget is this size or whatever. Here are the people you can access for help. Here are some courses that the company does that you may feel helpful. Then the employee says, okay, I know exactly what I have to do. I know that my leader had given me a chance to have a voice in that. So I know that it makes sense and it's practical and it will work. And I know resources that I have. Okay, fine. Don't call me, I'll call you. And that's an empowered employee. And they go off and they do things because everything has been laid out for them. And the leader is less worried now about that employee making a mistake because everything has been clear. But that process that I have just outlined for you, which is really what empowerment is, requires that the leader have good listening skills, good communication skills, that the leader be patient, that they be clear at articulating goals, that they be willing to respect the input from folks that may be different than they would normally be getting. So the leader needs to be quite skilled in order to make that process work. So when you say, how do I get an empowered organization? You have to go and say, okay, what is the skill level of my leaders currently against these various things and where do they need? And I often liken it to I'm not a big golfer, but if you're a golfer, you have a bag of clubs. Are you a golfer? Okay, so you get this. You don't play the whole game with the driver, right? You have the various clubs for the various purposes. So same with a leader. You need a whole bag of skills so you can pull out the right skill at the right time to achieve the outcome. So getting an empowered workforce is probably one of the most difficult things to do. You got to make sure you got all the clubs in your bag before you start. Then you're off and running. How's that?
That's a great analogy. So how can leaders ensure that when they are implementing sustainable strategies that have a lasting impact?
Yeah, great question. You have to do three things. Again, if you go to historically, a leader feels, I tell Phil what to do, he better do it. So they are working off of sort of, I've told you what the goal is, go deliver the outcome. But it's not, to your question, it's not necessarily going to guarantee the outcome, especially if you're talking about behavior. So if you say to me, give me the report tomorrow at 5, I get that. I mean, you'll get the report. But if you say improve the customer service, give us a safer environment out in the factory floor, make sure the quality coming off the line is of the highest standard. These are behaviors that you do that result in something. So for that to happen and for that empowerment or that behavior you want to be sustained, the leader has to do three things. The first is they must model the behavior they want, which you call walk the talk. And I'll give you an example there. We were working with a company and they said, okay, Phil, we want you to come in. We want you to train our senior people on accountability and empowerment, essentially. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to train them. And he said, no, it's perfect. It's great. He said, okay, you're supportive. Oh, absolutely. You agree this is the right thing? Oh, absolutely. You'll reinforce it. Oh, absolutely. Go do your thing. So I agree. It's wonderful. So we trained the course. And in order to make sure that it stays and it doesn't become flavor of the month, we typically go back in on a regular basis. How's it working? Any questions? And so I went back a month later and I said, how's it working? Oh, the course was great. It'll never work here. I said, what do you mean it'll never work here? Oh, no. It's just, it just will never work. I said, why? Well, frankly, because the CEO never applies the things that you taught us. He's not doing what you told us to do. Well, he doesn't do it. I'm not going to do it, obviously, because you do what your boss says, right? You follow the head a little bit. So I went and I knocked on his door. I said, excuse me, sir, Grand Poobah of the universe and all, but you said you were going to do this and you didn't. So all the money you've invested in training is waste. He said, Phil, I'm doing it. I said, well, actually, you're not. I got 40 people downstairs telling me you're not. And therefore, they are not adopting the behaviors that you want, which is going to get you the result you want. He said, Phil, I tell you, I am doing everything that you said to do in the class. So as we discussed about this, Anna, what he had done is he had taken the learnings, absorbed them, but sort of translated them into words and visions that made sense to him. So he used different models, different language, completely different than what we taught in the course. So when he went and talked to people, they had no idea what he was talking about because he didn't use the training, the tools, the models, and the language of the training. He was using his own. I said, okay, but how do you expect them to know that when we say up, you mean over there? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. We got to say up or whatever it was.
Right.
And said, you mean to tell me that all I've got to do is model the language and use the models that you taught? I go, yeah, that's all you got to do. He said, okay. I went back a month later. So now it's the second month in. I said, so what's happening? Oh, fantastic. The course is great. It's working. Everybody's changing. It's powerful. I said, why is that? Well, the CEO and the leadership team are modeling what you taught. And it was a fascinating story for me because while we say leaders have to set an example, it's not just set an example intentionally. It's actually practically what I want you to do, I am doing. What I want you to say, I am saying. I will be an example that you can follow. And once you have that, you're well on your way to getting this sustained behavior you want. Okay, too much, or am I keep going? I got 2 more to go.
Yeah, no, that thing that's great, and it makes me think about marketing, right? Because they say it takes 7 times to buy, right? At least, right? And once is not enough, and you have to be repetitive. And so you break that language, then people won't remember it, right?
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense.
You're absolutely right. Dead on.
Before you
Okay.
tell me the other two, I'm just going to close my door really quick.
Yeah, no problem.
My maid is here, and she's starting to vacuum, so I want perfect audio. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
no
ready for the
problem.
next two.
So now you've trained me on the behaviors that you want me to adopt, whatever they are. Better with the customer, better with safety, or whatever it is. And now I'm looking at my leader and I'm seeing my leader demonstrate those behaviors. And I go try to do it on the job. It doesn't work the way you said. It's a little harder. It's like a problem. I didn't understand. It's not as easy to do it as I thought it would be. So I am immediately discouraged from adopting those behaviors. So now the leader has to do the second thing. They've got to be there to coach, to help me, not criticize me because I'm not getting it right, but to say, look, Phil, here's what I do in that situation. Or here's how I would approach that problem. Or my door is open. If you're having trouble, don't let that stand. Come and ask me how I would do it. So the leader now becomes a coach. So now my desire to do it, the example I have for my boss, is supported by the fact that my leader is there to coach and help me implement it, which is a different set of skills, another club in the golf bag. But that means that I, as an employee, feel comfortable at working until I master the new behavior. Because I used to do things this way. Now you want me to do things this way. So if you take safety, for example, I mean, I used to walk by an unsafe situation because it wasn't me. I'm safe. You're not safe. That's not my problem. But now you've trained me that if you're unsafe, I should step in and do something and try to help you. Okay, well, I've never done that before. How are you going to respond? Are you going to be offended? What are you going to do? Can I do it? So doing it is a lot more difficult than being told to do it. So when my leader is there to coach me, I go, okay, that new behavior where I'm not only worrying about my own safety, but those of my colleagues, I'm beginning to learn how to do that because you are coaching. So that's the second thing. The third thing is require. And that's where the organization says, listen, culturally, we used to do this, and now we want this. We want our return policy to be like this, not like that. We want our customers served like this, not like that. We want safety like this, not like that. And that is a non-negotiable. So we are going to equip you with the skills to do it. Our leaders will be modeling it. They will be there to coach, but you do not have the option as to whether or not you're going to adopt those new behaviors.
Right.
If you go, listen, I don't like them. That's okay. I respect that. No problem. Go work for a company where you can agree with the behaviors they're asking of you. You don't have to, you don't have to agree with what I'm telling you to do. But if you're going to stay here, this is the way our culture is going. So the leader has to model, coach, and require those three things. It turns out actually that the better you model and coach, the less you have to require. If you feel you can get it just by laying down the law, requiring it will never work because the modeling and coaching is much more powerful. But you do know as a leader that what the organization is trying to do is non-negotiable. And so I will be here to help you, but you got to make that, you got to get there. Otherwise, we're going to part company. So once you have that framework, leaders go, okay, that's clear. And you tell the leaders and you tell the employees, hi, we're giving you these new skills. You can look to your leader. They will model it. They will coach it. They will require it. And we say to the leaders, you will model, you will coach, you will require. That journey might take 2 to 3 years to transform a culture, but it's just constantly repeating it. And in fact, in the book, we cover that off. Not in as much detail, but we talk through those stages so they get it.
So, that topic, talk to me about remote work. It's transforming the way the teams connect. And, what are your feelings on, I hear so many companies now going back to the old days and the kind of the struggle of some of the employees of now having to go back to the office. Do you have any thoughts on, how it has a place in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have thoughts and I have observations. Let me give you my thoughts first. I do not think people operate at their optimum when they can't have social interaction. We are social creatures. We like to talk. We like to be with people. We like to bump into them at the coffee machine and chit chat. And that builds a relationship and a bond, which when you get into a work situation, manifests itself in that I trust you. We chatted about your evening last night. We shared a problem or a coffee. I get to know you as a human being. And that human bond has a lot of intangible benefits. When we get into a meeting, I know you better. I know better how to share my thinking and whatever. So I do not think organizations work optimally when you can't interact. Practically speaking, in COVID, that was impossible. And today, we are either hybrid or one or the other. Some organizations think got to come back to work. Others say you can work virtually, and some say you're hybrid. In many cases, that's practicality. There's just the reality of the work. And once you spend 4 years living to work out of your house, your life changes and your kids and the way you deal with them. So it's difficult to just lay down the law. Well, we're going to stay hybrid or we're going to go into the building, although some companies are doing that. So I think from a practical point of view, you need to understand that virtual work and virtual meetings is here to stay. You and I are talking virtually, which would never have happened before. So how do you manage the virtual component for optimum productivity? The obvious ones are simple. You start on time, you end on time, you have an agenda, you talk through the topics, and you're done. The ones that are not so obvious are the human interaction ones, the ones that you don't get because you can't socialize. And so I think the way to do that, leaders need to build in what we call engagement time on the call. So at Eagles Flight, I was on a call before you with some of my team, and we had a 30-minute call because it's scheduled. But it's freezing cold here. It is freezing cold. And one of the people on the call, their furnace isn't working, and somebody else's person on the call was out hiking, and I got a dog that wants to walk miles every day. So we spent a few minutes chatting about that. Your furnace problem, my dog. And in the back of my mind, I'm the CEO going, okay, the clock is ticking. Time is money. I got to get through the agenda. But I'm also thinking, these are wonderful people. These are human people we need. So culturally, we encourage and allow that limited screen time to include social time. It's not structured. We don't formalize it. There will be 4.5 minutes of casual time. we do facilitate that to try to compensate for that. When we have meetings, like sales meetings, we usually kick it off. There's music. We have a like a little fun activity or a quiz or something. We have a moment of sharing what went on in your life. So we structure in an artificial way, but we structure some form of social interaction to try to, and it has worked. We do social parties when, birthday parties and stuff. So you can't overdo that because it's artificial. But if you ignore it completely, you dehumanize the organization. So I think every company will be different. They will approach it different ways. But I think in a virtual world as a leader, I have to be mindful. Again, I am dealing with human beings who have needs beyond the 9 to 5 requirements of the job. They need to be cared for. They need to be respected. They need to be valued. And their furnace is off. They want some commiseration. So again, all of this kind of comes back to at the core of leadership is caring for your people, recognizing that your people are just like you. They want to be valued. They want to be respected. They want to be esteemed. They want to be cared for. They also want to do great work and they want to be highly efficient, but the two are not disconnected. They're integrated. And as a leader, you need to learn to do that. So that would be my answer to your question. But if I could wave a magic wand at Eagles Flight, I'd have everybody back in a building. We sold our building at COVID. And one of these days, we'll try to buy another one. But by then, the dog is out of the kennel a little bit because people are now, we've hired remote people who are thousands of miles away. They're not going to come to the building. So we've got to be able to do both.
Right. Well, that's exciting. So you work with countless teams. Is there one cultural shift that you've been a part of that comes to mind where it really, truly, transformed the business?
Uh, yes, I would like to think that if you hire us to do that, it will work. But I do think, and I'll answer your question in a minute. I think we as a company are very unique because if you hire us to deliver a cultural shift, we will guarantee the outcome. Which people go, you will what? You'll guarantee the outcome. You will guarantee my customer service will be better. You guarantee we'll be safer. Absolutely. Not because you can write me a check and I will guarantee it, but because we have a very disciplined process that includes you as the CEO, you as the leadership team. If I can equip all your leaders to model, coach, and require the new behaviors, it's going to happen. They go, oh, well, yeah, you're right. So the guarantee is only if you allow us to do what we can do. So you have to tell me as the CEO, okay, you're the CEO. To what degree do you want this new behavior to take hold? The greater the importance and the more you want it to take hold, the more you have to let me have access to the leaders. Because I can guarantee it at whatever level you want, but that's conditional upon you letting me have access to your leaders, which again, I try to make really clear in the book where Bridget has to come to grips with that reality. So the answer to your question, I have to think of companies that have basically said, yes, we need this outcome and therefore we will support you however it is you feel that we need to do, which again is not, it sounds draconian somehow, but let's just take an example. And the example I'm thinking of the ones is actually safety, where these were literally dozens of factories all around the world. And they wanted the workforce to be safer. They had policies and procedures, but the goal was to have the people actually be willing to follow the policies. So it's not that you're unwilling. It's just, well, this will never happen to me. So why should I bother? Well, that person, that's not very safe, but it'll probably be okay. So it's not that people are malicious. They just don't have top of mind a behavior that says, my job is to make sure everybody in the company is safe. And once every employee feels that, and you have an organizational structure that supports it, then people behave differently. So in this particular case, okay, that's what we want. How do we get there? And I say, well, okay, your leaders are going to have to follow certain protocols. They go, well, what is this? Is this burdensome? I say, well, no. You're an executive. You go into a factory. The first thing I want you to say before you say anything else is, before I leave, I'd like to meet with your safety committee and check your safety results. Oh, okay. I mean, it's not difficult to say, but the moment you say that, if you're a ranking executive and you go to a factory, I'd like to see your safety team before I leave. They go, within 5 minutes, that message will have gone to the whole company. Ooh, he's really worried about safety. And then the next thing I want you to do is, if the facility requires a hard hat and safety boots, I want you to say, I need a hard hat and safety boots. Right. So people, okay, well, I can do that. I can say that. Like, so literally we give them a little card. We say, okay, next time you go to a facility, you say these 3 things. And now, because you've hired Eagles Flight, we're going to make sure you do that. I'm going to measure that you do that. I'm going to track that you do that. I'm going to follow up. You're going to do that. But remember, you said, I will do whatever it is I need to do. If you show me, I've shown you, you've agreed. Well, now you're going to have to do it. And that, I think, is a little bit of the magic of Eagles Flight. Because once we get people trained and aligned and agreed, we stay with them until those new behaviors become habitual. And once they become habitual, they don't need us anymore. But the behaviors are now enshrined in the DNA, and you get the results you want, and off you go. So that process that now we do other things, you do reinforcement and so on. But if you have access to the company leadership and you're doing what they want, it's really cool, because you're helping them get what they want and you're giving them the tools, because I know how to change behavior and they know how to, I don't know, make bicycles or whatever it is. But they're like, you do that, I'll do this. We put ourselves together and you'll get what you want. Because we are a behavior change company, and you're you make yogurt, or build software or something. You go do your thing. And if you want to be able to live differently, I can change the behavior, but the benefit will benefit your organization, because your leaders now have skills they didn't have. Long answer. Sorry about that.
Well, no, I think it is. It's you have to be the change that you want to see, right, in the world.
Yeah.
And that's reinforcing it every day. And if you fell off one day and you didn't do it, well, get back up on the horse and
Exactly. Exactly. And you got to be, that's very profound, because you've got to be willing to say, I'm not going to get it right the first time, which is why we say, okay, it takes 2 years.
yeah.
It takes 2 years for a full transformation, and sometimes 3, depending on the size of the company, to transform a whole company. Now, we can transform the sales department or the marketing department more quickly, but if you want a corporate transformation, it takes time. The new things have to become habitual.
And when you start the process, and I'm hearing this probably like a whole information gathering process. You're talking to the leader, talking to the team, and then you're creating this curriculum and an evaluation, and then it's being refined.
Yep.
And then at the end of this transformation, they probably have these assets that then they can use for further education and training.
Exactly. That's exactly right. In fact, typically we call that a discovery. Typically, you might go in for 2 or 3 weeks and run focus groups, meet with high potentials, meet with the executives, do ride along. We need to know the company. In one case, we literally took 2 months and sent 20 teams of people, teams of 2, all around the world, because this organization was so big that we had to check out their facilities in Angola and Alaska and Colombia. And we literally, when we came back, we said, okay. They said, wow, you know us better than we know you. I know. I need to know what you're doing now if you want me to change it to something else. So anyway.
Yeah, I know. And that must have been fun to hear about the stories that everyone
Oh, yeah.
about the different cultures and what they like to eat, and that would be even just cool.
Because if you're going to change behavior, you have to think about, how does it fit within the environment that it's going to be applied to. And the environments are different between Alaska and Angola. So
I bet they are. So to think about, I know you've done so many things. What is one lesson that you wish you had known earlier about leadership?
that's a great question. I don't think I appreciated the value of process. That I think early in my career, which is mean, we're all shaped differently, but if somebody says to me, this is the right way to do something, okay, I just do it. I don't really think twice. I had a great leader and he was phenomenal. I mean, just phenomenal. And I went into one day and I said, so how come you're so efficient? And he rattled off like 4 things. I keep my desk clean. I went back. I did the 4 things. It was like, okay, he's better than I am. I'll just do what he does. But the world doesn't really work like that. You need to build a conviction. You need to learn. Then you need to practice. And you need to fail. And then you need to be helped with the practice. Then you fail again. Then the world changes. So to go from one set of skills to another set of skills, you really need a process. You don't just need your leader there to model and coach. You need someone there to train you if you need help. You need some, and then you're sick and you come back 4 weeks later and something has changed and you hire someone who's never been through the training. And I mean, it's like life is complicated. So as a leader, I never really understood that it wasn't a in, out, done. It was more in, stay in for a while, stay in a little bit longer, stay. Okay, is it fully in the DNA yet? Is it? No. Okay, now it's there. And then you're done. So it's that journey, which I call process, but really it's allowing time for the new ways of behaving for me to become comfortable with them, for me to be able to understand them, not just be able to repeat them back, which is why exams are stupid because it doesn't mean anything. You're just examining knowledge. But if you're trying to get behavior, the exam doesn't help. Exams are great if you want to know, can you remember?
Memorize something.
Yeah. But the larger journey, it just takes time for people to assimilate it and for it to become theirs. And I didn't appreciate that early on. So I think today I'm much more, partly as a company, we provide those processes, and I'm more encouraging to be patient, to understand that it will take time. And I'll say to somebody, it's going to take 2 years. 2 years, because they think you're going to get nothing for 2 years. So you're going to see results in the first 2 weeks, and then you'll see results 2 months later, and then 5 months later. But for the results to be sustained and it not be flavor of the month, that's what takes the time. That's the process journey.
Yeah, I do the same thing with technology. We do a lot of auditing of how many, an average company, a large company, they could have over 100 pieces of software. And, there's redundancies and someone's using it this way and other people are using it this way. And do we don't even know what this software does? And even that's kind of similar as like, what are we using it? What are we trying to accomplish? And then how do we, start to remove and create the tech stack that will be sustainable?
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
That's exactly. Yep. Yep. Very similar.
So I guess my last question for you, thank you so much for being here. This has been so wonderful for me. I really look up to you. Tell me, what's next for you? Is there going to be another book? What's next?
Every time I write a book, I say, I'm not going to write another one. So I have 2 books in mind, but I don't think one is what it really takes to be a leader. I don't think that there's not much out there about what real leadership is like. I mean, leadership is like phenomenally tough. And then when you talk about it, but it is really tough. And I've often thought it would be good to help people understand that journey. And another book I've thought of doing is, I think I don't I don't believe that selling is selling. I think selling is about understanding where your potential customer is coming from and helping to meet that need, which opens up a whole canvas. Oh yeah, solution selling. But actually it's not that. It's like, what's that person need? Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's invisible, sometimes it's emotional. It's obviously a product or service. So I've thought of doing that on one page, and on the other page, how do I be a sales leader leading those behaviors? Because the 2 go hand in hand. But however, I don't think that that's going to happen. I mean, it's just asking ideas I have. I will tell you what's next for Eagle Swipe. Chat GPT and artificial intelligence is changing the world so dramatically that if you want information, you can get it now. So the concept of training that is content driven. Now, right now, AI is still very linear, text heavy, but it's going to evolve so quickly that the idea of me learning content will probably be delivered through an AI portal somehow,
Yeah.
which is going to put training companies out of business, obviously. But Eagles Flight is an experiential learning company. So you don't really change behavior by learning. You change behavior by application of the learning, by building conviction around that learning. So if I want to change your behavior, I've got to make sure that you have conviction, you have knowledge, you're able to interpret it in your world, and then you actually can put it into practice. Oops, my dog is saying,
Oh, what a beauty.
thanks. So the experiential learning piece is rapidly becoming more and more important in the training world, and that's what we do. We are an experiential learning company and probably among the most unique in the world. Oh, a ranger, he wants to go out for a visit. But anyways, so as you say to me, what is coming into the future? I think it is to continue to promote the value of experiential learning and the uniqueness of Eagles Flight, because then we bypass the whole chat GP thing. So I think that is one component. And another component, so that I think is the key thing. If you say what's next, is to make that open. But I have an idea here that if you take the experiential learning component to the extreme, right now, we bring you into an environment where you learn by experience and we debrief it and off you go. I would like that experience to expand over a period of time, let's say 3 or 4 months, because then I have built in my process, the idea of it happening not just once where I get it, but I can build in the retention. So I created a program that allows for that, but at the same time takes the new behaviors that you need to learn to be a really world-class leader and gives you a single tool that allows you to play with that tool while you're going through this experience over 4 months. So now I have a long period of time and a fun experience that I'm going through. And on that journey, I'm learning things as I need them. So just in time, I'm learning them for myself. But when the whole thing is done, I've got all the skills I need to be a world-class leader. So in my mind, that is really exciting because now I, as the participant, the learner, I have control over my journey. I have control over my learning. I have control over my pace, but it's all within this defined framework that Eagles Flight has provided. So I know I'm learning the right skills, learn these skills. I'll be world-class, but I can do it in a way that is optimal for me. So I hope I'm being clear.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It makes me think of like the gamification. And when you play a game and you're you're passing levels and you're getting new animals and avatars and every level that you pass, you've learned something and you feel accomplished and you can play the game at your speed, right?
Yeah.
But you're still playing the game.
That's much better explained, but that's right. That's it. Yeah. So those are the two things that I'm thinking about: drive experiential learning and try to change the learning environment a little bit.
Have you played with those meta glasses?
I have.
Oh, because I think a lot about how that can be used to create some of the experiential, and then even from people in different countries being able to get together in, in virtual reality. And
Yeah, it's very cool. I think right now it's cost prohibitive. You can't give thousands of people, although I think Accenture gave everybody virtual glasses, but you can't give all your participants that, partly, and you disconnect you from the human interaction.
yeah,
So while it brings tremendous value for some learning, I think other learning where you need team skills and so on, it's not going to work so well. At least at this stage, they may get there, but it is truly incredible.
it really is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. And to learn more about Eagles Flight, you can visit eagleflight.com and you can connect with Phil on LinkedIn and make sure to pick up one of his books. He's got 9 to choose from, and his recent one published by Forbes, which I can't wait to get a copy of. And please join me next week as I interview another industry expert on a topic to help you succeed on and offline. I'll see you in the pixels. Aloha.